My name is Pastor Karl Tsatalbasidis. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada, but my background is Greek. My parents are Greek. They moved from Greece to Canada, and so I was born and raised there in Toronto. I did not grow up in a Christian family. I should say a Seventh-day Adventist Christian family, and so it was a very secular upbringing, but I appreciated it because my parents worked hard and they taught me to work hard, and so I learned a lot of things that I wouldn't have learned any other way. I was always working with my father ever since a young age, and so he taught me the dignity of work. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm married and have a couple of kids. My wife is from the Philippines, and she was 18 when she moved to Canada. So she was born and raised here in the Philippines, in the Cebu area. And then when she was 18, she moved to Canada, and I met her several years later on a secular campus called York University. She was studying piano performance, and I was studying jazz performance, and that's how we met. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about how I came to the Lord. But we have two beautiful children. My daughter Sophia will be turning 14 while I'm here in the Philippines on December 6th, and I have a son, Dino, and they're both very musical. Sophia has sung for 3ABN, for GYC, and she will be singing for GYC coming up in December 9th in Louisville, Kentucky. My son Dino also plays the violin, so we have a very musical family. So Friday night for worship is always a wonderful time together. So I'm 42 years old. I'm working now as a pastor. I've been working as a pastor in the Michigan Conference since 1993. And I'm currently a doctoral student at the Theological Seminary at Andrews University. I am studying systematic theology. Actually, what I'm doing here at the Philippine GYC is really the reason for why I went back to school in order to study on a doctoral level. I wanted to study deeply and much more earnestly into the issues of worship and music, and the seminary and the doctoral program would give me the time to do that. And so that's why I returned to the seminary in order to study systematic theology. So.
Wow. So could you share to us your conversion story?
Yes. As I mentioned before, I was raised in a Greek Orthodox family, and that's similar to Roman Catholic. When we would go to church, I would ask my mom as I was a young boy, well, why is the priest doing this? Or why is this happening? Or why are they doing that? And every answer I would get is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And so from a young age, I was trained to believe that religion is not something you're supposed to know anything about. That you just kind of go to church and you receive the sacraments, the Eucharist, you know, all the things that they offer, but there's really no connection with your mind. And as I was raised growing up in that secular environment, there was really little room for God. And then it's a very evolutionary mindset over where I grew up. And so you begin to accept some of these scientific theories and so forth and so on. And when I was studying jazz performance, I met my wife there, Lily Mae. And the Lord literally brought us together. She was raised here in the Philippines, and at a very young age, the Lord had blessed her with a lot of musical talent and ability. And her grandmother, who raised her, said, I think God's plan for you is to marry a pastor. But she ran from that. She ran from that. And when she got to Canada, she didn't even want to engage conversations or date or court other young men that were Christians because they might turn out to be a pastor. So those words of her grandmother were ringing in her ears, and she thought, you know, I'm not even going to do that. And so when she met me, I had a lot more hair, you know.
Yeah.
It was a lot longer. And she looked at me and she said, you know what? He's the furthest thing from a pastor I've ever met. And so she felt like she was on safe ground. And so she began to introduce me to the Lord, and I began to think, well, religion is only for old people or people that are ready to die. But I really wanted to know for the first time in my life. And so I remember asking God I said, God, if there is a God, can you please reveal yourself to me? I'm ready. I want to know, but I need something rock solid. And so she was praying for me, earnestly praying, because she was ready to break the relationship off. So she was praying for me, and she gave me a Bible to read, and I read the New Testament and the books of Daniel and Revelation, and of course I didn't understand them. And as she continued to pray for me, she gave me a great controversy and told me to read certain chapters in the great controversy. And I remember it was over the Easter break, so we had about a week or so off of school. And so I read those chapters that she asked me to read, like on America and prophecy, and I was very intrigued. And I began to read the book from cover to cover. And in 2 weeks, I had read 600 plus pages in 2 weeks. And I was in shock. I was amazed. My whole world was turned upside down. It was the truth, and there was nothing I could do to escape it. I would play in these jazz rock bands every Friday and Saturday night, and I remember the first time I had to take a stand for the Sabbath. I approached the band leader and I said, I'm not going to be able to play this Friday night. Well, why not? Did you get some job or gig somewhere else? He said, no. I said, no. I said, it's the Sabbath. He says, the Sabbath? I said, yes. From sunset Friday to sunset Saturday is the Sabbath, and I'm not going to be able to play. And he said, well, what about next week? I said, well, next week will be the Sabbath as well, so I'll not be able to play then. And that basically destroyed my musical career. And I should have been so depressed that I would have just hung something around my neck and thrown myself into the river, but I was so happy. I really felt a joy and a peace that I've never had before, and I just wanted to continue studying. And so I went to Andrews University and the Lord called me to be a pastor, and here I am.
So what did your wife say when you became a pastor?
That's a good question. What did my wife say when I became a pastor? Actually, when we got married after a couple of years of courtship, I wasn't a pastor. So she said, see, I didn't marry a pastor. But the Lord has ways of working things out, and the Lord brought her to the point of surrender. And she said, and she also had given up a musical career. She was very gifted, very talented, could have gone to some of the most prestigious universities in America. But she realized that if she would go there, she would lose her soul as well. All the competition, of course you're looking at playing Friday nights and Saturday nights, and so she didn't want to go. She knew that I can't go there. If I do that, I know I'm going to be lost because it's too much of a temptation for me. And so she decided then to go. She decided then to go to Andrews. But she still could say, yes, I didn't marry a pastor. But the Lord, and she's always been willing to go wherever the Lord has called me to go. Wherever you go, I go. And so, and even doing the PhD, which is a very expensive project, she knew I was wrestling with it for a year and a half. I was wrestling what to do. And so she said, why don't you go? I'll work.
Very good. And so the next question, how many years have you been doing this GYC ministry?
I'm relatively new to doing this at GYC. And so I remember doing a seminar that I'm going to conduct here. I was doing a seminar for a group of young people in Kalamazoo who were going to a secular university over there, and so they called me to go over there. And one of the officers at GYC was at that church. And he asked me, have you ever done this for GYC? And I said, no, I have not. Would you be willing to? I said, yes, I would. And so he went ahead and talked to the powers that be. And so when December came of 2008 in San Jose, they had invited me to go. And so that's really my first contact with GYC, although I know that it had been around in Michigan because it all basically started under the leadership of Dr. Pippin in Michigan. So last year was really my first experience, and my daughter had the opportunity to sing there, and I'm so happy that I could be here in the Philippines doing the same thing. So my experience has been relatively new with GYC.
So in that short span, what are the experiences you can share to us?
Yes. In San Jose, it was very uplifting. People would come to the seminar a half an hour early just to find a seat.
Wow.
And that was something very encouraging. Young people wanted to know what the Bible said. They wanted to know how these things worked, and they were willing and anxious to come and sit a half an hour early just so that they can have a seat. I was placed, like a lot of presenters, it was just, the room was just too small, and that's the way it was. And so there were many people that were turned away because of security reasons, and so. But I was very much impressed with the spirit and the quality of the young people that were there. Very anxious and willing to check things out by the Bible, and so it was a very positive experience.
Wow. So what can you share, or a last message to young people?
The Lord has called you to do great things. God has given you talents and abilities, and no matter what talents you may think you have, if you're willing to surrender your heart and your life to Him, there's no telling what He's going to be able to do with you. I once wanted to just tour the world, you know, as a rock star. But now I'm invited to the Philippines and all these other places, you know, to be an ambassador for Him. I never thought I would see the day. And so just be faithful where you are. Put your whole heart into it. Don't worry about the talents that you don't have. Just put your heart into it and invest in what the Lord has done, and do your best no matter what He's called you to do. And you will find that He will multiply those things, and He will open up opportunities for you that you never dreamed possible. So be committed. Don't be tempted to make shortcuts on your spirituality. No matter what your field may be, whether it's theology or business or medicine or nursing or whatever it may be, don't make shortcuts on what your ultimate purpose is, and that is to be a missionary. So don't shortchange the Lord on that. Give Him your all, and you'll see what He's going to be able to do.
Last question. How do you find your stay here in the Philippines?
Oh, it's been very nice, very pleasant. You know, when I see Filipino people, I'm like, oh, those are like my own, you know, because my wife is from the Philippines and we spent so much time, and so I've really enjoyed my stay. You have done a wonderful job in spoiling us with wonderful food and fellowship, and so I've really enjoyed my time here so far.
So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.